I know I was relentless. I wasn't exactly sure who I was messaging on Reddit. Who was it? Was it you, Ivan, or
Yeah, it was me.
yeah, I was relentlessly messaging you, I think. And I was just like, man, I want to see this game, man. This game is awesome. Stop motion. It was one of those things that never occurred to me. But of course, like it's just an image and you can move the image and then you layer the images and move the image. I mean, it just, of course, you can do these things. And I spoke to someone recently that made like a Game Boy Color game. And it was also that site type of Epiphany where I was like, well, of course you can make new Game Boy Color games. Well, of course you can make stop motion animation as a game, but it's just one of those things you just don't think about until you see somebody do it and you go, you can admit that's a good idea.
You know, you saying somebody made a new Game Boy Color game actually like really surprised me.
Really? Yeah.
Do you mean they made like they used like a cartridge, or they made something that would play on a cartridge on a physical Game Boy?
They made an actual, okay, yeah, so there's a little bit of a digression. It's actually the most recent
totally
episode. Yeah, it's the most recent episode I actually just posted, but he made a new Game Boy Color game, and he actually makes like Game Boy games, and he uses it and he had a pre-order for a while where you could buy like the cartridges, so he had to import all like this homebrew stuff to actually make the cartridges. You think he sold like, I can't remember, it was something like either between like 50 or 100. I don't remember exactly how many he sold.
And if he's still doing that, I'd buy one. That sounds amazing. I have a Game Boy Color here. Yeah, I would absolutely play the shit out of that. That sounds awesome.
I know, right? And so that was one of the things that caught me when I talked to him. I was like, dude, what is this? This is so rad. And same kind of epiphany though. It was like, of course you could make that. You could go and make a Nintendo game. Why wouldn't you be able to make a Nintendo game? It's not, what the thing I said, or the realization I made, which was like the consoles are still around. It's not like they burned them all. You can go and pick up a Nintendo, plug in a cartridge, and then reverse engineer. It's just the only thing is like everyone's obsessed with the newest, greatest, latest tools, but it's like we could bring it back and make old stuff, and it's why not?
I think that's kind of where our design philosophy might be kind of coming from, right? We've been kind of making this, I mean, in more ways than just using the stop motion, but also kind of like doing some necromancy on, point and click adventure, puzzle games, right? Yeah. We talked for a long time when we started this project about Myst, Riven, and Monkey Island, and all these old, I mean, even like shovelware, point and click games that were just, flash games and stuff that came out way back, in the late 90s and the early aughts. And I think that I've been thinking about that like kind of phenomenon a lot, of people just, indie devs specifically making games that are playing with older art styles or older, like within the confines of like older technologies as their limitations, because it's not like those are ever going to be like not relevant. Like those, they can always be relevant as long as you're doing them in a way that's interesting. And and you don't need to be like, and I don't know that you really need, like, I don't really know that the onus is on indie devs to be like pushing the envelope on like, super optimized graphics or super hyper, hyper realistic graphics and, and stuff like that. So I mean, ironically though, another thing that we've talked about is that because we're using real photograph that Ivan's making, we do have a photoreal game, right?
Yeah. Oh,
that's photos.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
Photographs that make up our game. And
beat these graphics.
Yeah, you can't really beat them. I mean, our FPS is pretty low, right? But but in terms of photorealism, it's about as close as it can.
Yeah. So that's funny. That's funny, actually. And it's super unique. Yeah, Ivan, go ahead. I'm really curious because you did all the stop motion, right, Ivan?
Oh, sure. But I think one of the things I'm going to speak to is like connecting back to history of different like art forms and mediums. One of the things that Ben and I are also incorporating. So not only are we trying to like do something in the spirit of 90s era point and click games that we both love and puzzle games from that time. The storytelling and the full look and feel of the game is meant to evoke the golden age of silent film. So we're talking like 1920s, 1930s, early silent, black and white silent films. Because that's something I love. Ben also likes silent film. So then we're getting like even older as far as storytelling mediums. Because of modern technology, what used to take huge groups of people to pull that off in the 1920s, we can actually do on we can do reasonably well. I don't think that I would say that like my animation is as good as something like Lottie Reiniger, because she was amazing. But it reasonably well with a very small team. So
and no budget.
Special thing. Yeah, and no budget.
Zero.
Yeah.
Right.
Just working with the tools we already have.
No budget in indie? No budget in indie dev? You're kidding me.
Tale as old as time.
Yeah. I mean, and it's just, I mean, first of all, the aesthetic is amazing. And actually, I didn't just watch, but when you sent me your trailer to your game, I like the point and click. I like the way you have. Let me try. My thoughts go faster than my mouth sometimes.
Oh, totally fine.
It feels really good when you see like the motion and then the pointing, the clicking, and then it just looks really interesting and unique. And I'm looking at it over here on my other screen, but and it was such a unique looking project. And I just want to know like tactilely, like how you thought through like not each exact thing, but like kind of give me a little bit of behind the scenes thinking through all the problems and all the different things and mechanisms you wanted to experience or see in the game.
So maybe I'll start with the initial like sort of animation planning side, and then I can hand over to Ben for how he actually makes everything work. Because like as we developed this, we first did the very first thing we did was we did a rough proof of concept. We did 4 rooms of an ace, just to test the ideas that we had of like how could we actually do this thing. But then after that, like I sat down with pencil and paper and drew out the first version of the map that would be the full maze. It's been revised a bit since then, but it's pretty close to what I first drew. But then it was dreaming up puzzles, sitting in calls with Ben. Ben and I would talk through an idea for a puzzle, see if it was feasible given the tool set that we had developed and how to approach it. I'd plan out the animations that I had to do, like to create. We never use a sprite for the mouse. The mouse is always live in the picture. We do use sprites for the puzzle elements, but then they have to be animated in such a way that I'm animating them in the same scene with the same lighting, so that all the light and the shadows and everything it's all physical props. Right. So, part of that, before we animated any of these things, it's always been like talking about me being like, okay, here's a rough concept, or Ben would be like, wouldn't this be a neat concept? Like the slide wall was initially from a concept from Ben, which is one of our puzzles. And we talked through like, okay, here's a concept. Can we actually do it? And then once we have the can, it's me thinking about the animation side of the shop, then thinking about the code and backend and Unity side. And so let's take the heart puzzle, which is one of the first ones you see. That's 2 halves of a heart that when you click a button, there's 2 buttons that make it rotate. When you click a button, the 2 halves of the heart rotate at different increment numbers, right? So they don't rotate in unison, and you've got to make them light up. So I put together all the sprites for that, and then I hand it off to Ben. And so for me, it's making all those physical props, animating the heart halves rotating, animating the mouse pressing the buttons of the puzzle interface. And then I give all of that to Ben, and there's this mess of like, it's organized, but still, it's a bunch of video clips and image files.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because like one of the things you just said as far as like making sure the lightings and things like that line up, because obviously while you're making a game, you have full control over that world. You can just pop in a spotlight or pop in a prop light or something like that, or just move an asset or whatever. But it's like, if you need to go back and be like, oh shit, we need that over here. It's like, I mean, just to have to recreate a scene, you have to make sure that it's lined up perfectly with the scene before, because of, you have to, I mean, just being like, if you had to go through one of your mazes and you're like, oh shit, that one part of the scene didn't work out, or that puzzle specifically didn't work, so we're gonna have to change the puzzle like this. You're gonna have to change like 10 of the frames, not all the frames, but like let's say like there's like 100 frames out of this one thing, you have to change 10 of them, making sure those all line up specifically.
Yeah, we did a lot of we had a lot of conversations, you know, before we even had Ivan, you know, construct the scene and start shooting. I mean, we kind of had to treat this a little bit more like a short film. Or I say short film, but like a independent film, right?
Yeah.
Where, you know, yeah, you're right. If we run into a problem with like, oh, this lighting doesn't look right, or like for some reason this sprite isn't working with this background, like it's not, the transparency isn't working, it's not blending in well, right? We had to do a lot of careful planning to make sure that every time we had Ivan, you know, do these things, he wasn't just wasting his time, right?
Right.
And similarly, if I'm writing code, you know, the puzzle needs to work, you know, conceptually, and needs to be read by the player effectively too, right? They need to understand the puzzle to be able to engage with it. And so, you know, it could be a real waste of time if we have to go redo an entire puzzle. If they don't understand how to interact with mechanisms, or if they don't understand how the, you know, mechanisms work with, you know, say the heart puzzle, if they can't figure out how to solve it intuitively or procedurally, right? Then you know, then we have to rethink our puzzle, which is a lot of work. So, you know, we did some. We've been kind of adopting a little bit of like the early test often, but again, we have a very small team with, you know, we can only do so much of the often part. We did a lot of the early part, right?
Yeah.
You know, so we had like we kind of had set up like a bunch of benchmarks. We're like, okay, we have this proof of concept. We kind of show that to people, see how they interact with the scenes. Okay, and then we moved on. We had, you know, this first, you know, 20 some rooms that we had laid out and put together in Unity. But even before we shot one of those rooms, we had a lot of discussion about what we would go on. But we did what after have. I mean, even with all that careful planning, we did have to reshoot rooms. There were some things that were like, you know, test players weren't catching one of the clues, or like weren't understanding, you know, key aspects of that early part of the maze, and so we did have to reshoot a couple rooms. But you know, so the whole test early thing was really really crucial for us, I think. Otherwise, we would have had to redo a lot more.
Yeah, and especially with the room reshoots, this is gonna be like one of the funny things about the game is there is only one room, like because we're shoestring budget, limited space. I animated my garden shed in the back garden of my house. So the entire maze, it's modular. It's 6 rooms. Sorry, it's 6 walls, like three walls with doors, 3 walls that don't have doors, and then different floor tiles depending on where the maze is. And so I build it. I build a room, animate it, deconstruct it, build another room, animate it, deconstruct it. So there isn't really any going back to a previously built set. I have to I'm never going to get it to line up perfectly again.
Yeah.
So when we have to reshoot, so let's say if you have a room with 3 doors, right? That's going to be that'll be 7 animations, right? Then we got neutral and then in and out for the other 3 doors.
Yeah, so if you have 3, if you have 3 doors, it'd be 7 animations.
Yeah, so a 3-door room is 7 animations to cover all of the possible things that the mouse can do. So if that has to be reshot, which we did, we had about a dozen reshoots or so.
Yeah, about, I would say.
Yeah. So basically, you just have to toss out all those animations, set up the room again, and then Ben has to go back in and replace all those all those assets and video files and make sure that it all works.
In the case of a reshoot, that's not so much work for me, because I really just have I can talk a little bit more, you know, in detail about how it works on the back end, but you know, I essentially just have to replace the videos, right? I don't have to really code anything, but so that's, you know, there were, you know, on several occasions where it was just like, oh yeah, like we have to just like, all we have to do is replace the 7 or the 5 videos or whatever is in there. If it's 2 rooms, or if it's 2 doors in a room, or if it's 3 doors or an object or something, it's like, okay, we've got 7 videos I just need to replace, and 7 still pictures as well, and I can go into that a bit further. And that's all that needs to be replaced in the event of like, you know, like this room shouldn't be like a dead end anymore, or like we don't like the way that this hazard works, or we don't like the way that this interaction is working. It's like, okay, then I need to go back to the drawing board with my script for that room. So
that planning phase up into when we start our first shots must have been grueling, to say the least a little bit. Like, just because you're right, you don't want to waste too much time doing the reshoots. And so like, I mean, compared to when I think about like my journey when I'm making a game, you can kind of be a little bit more, I guess, in a way, barbaric with it. You can kind of just start throwing stuff in there, seeing what feels good, and then remove it as needed. Where this case, it's like like you just said, you basically you're setting up in a way a short film, and you kind of have to plan a lot more from A to Z. You know where we need to end up because of the constraint on being able to make all these frames in the stop motion style. Compared to if you mess up something in normal animation, you can either redraw something or whatever with pixel art, or just move an asset in 3D animation or something like that. It's much more easy.
It's kind of a blessing and a curse, right? Because on the one hand, I don't have to like we have this really cool effect that would be very difficult to program. I mean, or at least be kind of a pain. A lot of devs complain about making shaders, right? And and normal maps and stuff. And we have this one area of the map or the maze that it has this green tile, and the mouse is, it's so polished that it has this really clean reflection of the mouse. And, you would have to simulate that with a shader or some sort of texture map, or some sort of, you'd have to come up with some clever way of engineering that in an engine, and you might have some more freedom with how you can adjust that once you have made the game. But the way because we're doing this all with physical sets, physical lighting, and photographs, it's just got this really cool evocative effect that is just like, it's more work in other ways, right? But it's but I really love what we've got from Ivan's.
It makes me feel really nostalgic, because it's like because like I'm a huge like 80s 90s movie nerd, and so it's like I miss practical effects sometimes. You see something and you're just like, did that really need to be CGI? Did it really need to be some sort of wacky computer animation or something? Like, we could have done a practical effect here. And it's just like, sometimes you have so much more impact from something like that. And so like seeing something done practically is, like I said, it's refreshing, and it's like, it's nostalgic. You see it and you kind of like, man, when I think of stop animation, I think of like, my kid loves Rudolph. You know what I mean? Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. I'm like, every Christmas we watch Rudolph. You know what I mean? So that's like our thing. And it's like, those are so nostalgic. And it's like that type of animation. And like, what was it? What's the other one with the fire and the ice guy, Mr. Winter, and it doesn't matter.
Oh yeah.
It's so funny that you mentioned those, because I was terrified of those as a kid. I actually, before this project, I kind of turned my nose a little bit up to stop motion. No offense, Ivan. But I had a hard time with stop motion because I found it just very creepy. I found like there's something, especially claymation, even Wallace and Gromit. I love Wallace and Gromit, but watching that first Wallace and Gromit film, like, there's something really eerie about it. There's something really off-putting about the way that these characters move and their facial expressions, and I think that's intentional in those cases. But with Ivan's work, because it's all wood, it feels like you're playing with toys, and it's so. I mean, it still can have that kind of eerie, off-putting feeling too, which is nice, but it's not like. But I don't know. And also, I've come around to appreciate stop motion a lot more since working with it a lot more. So.
For sure.
Well, it's the thing where Ben and I talked about a lot from the beginning, is that what we end up with is a real fake mouse. Like so, like in terms of the subconscious effect of it, hopefully, is that people look at this and they perceive a living fake toy mouse, right? Like but it feels tangible. And the world that it's in feels tangible. Oh, something you had mentioned a bit earlier about like the grueling process of planning. Funnily enough, I actually really love that part.
Mm.
Like it
Oh
involved,
wow, okay.
yeah. Like I don't know, it's something I particularly enjoy. It might be why part of why I got into stop motion. But
Mm,
Ben and I created a well, two things that were instrumental in being able to plan. One was a PDF version of our map. That's the map of the
mm,
maze. And then each square that representing each room is a clickable link and then we have a Cartesian coordinate system so that they're
mhm,
all named like D4 or D7 or whatever.
right.
And then when you click on a given room, it takes you to a tab in a spreadsheet. And this spreadsheet has like 70 tabs because I think we have about 70 rooms. I should have this stuff memorized, but no.
We have like 90.
So we did increase. Yeah, we're up to like 90.
Yeah, we're
So
almost at
so
100.
Oh,
yeah, so
wow.
there's this master spreadsheet that has a tab for every single room,
Mhm,
and in that tab is a shot list of all the animations
mm,
and the status of have these been shot yet? Are the still images that
mm,
correspond to them done? Are they in the folder for Ben? And then there's a master tab, and there's a home tab in that spreadsheet that we can both look at, where Ben built in his like, okay, this is the status of the dev side, and then at a glance I can drop in the status of the animation side,
mm,
so that when we're working on this together, we don't have to be constantly being like, oh, what do you have C7 done,
mhm,
right? Or where's that at? Like, because then in a given tab for a given room, there's a link to the folder where all the assets live in the
mhm.
Google Drive. So we built all that architecture before we did a single actual production room of the game.
Yeah.
And I love that. I was just like, because there's this neat thing of like this extrapolation of going from rough concept to okay, this is our guide that's going to make it possible for us to stay oriented in what we're doing and not
Mhm,
get lost.
yeah.
And so doing that together, I think, really helped. Yeah.
Yeah, we were both pretty keen about making some pretty thorough documentation about
Yeah.
how we wanted everything to look, how we needed everything to, behave, especially when it came to puzzles. So it was really helpful
Uh,
because there were some times
Mhm,
where we would come up with puzzles. I'd be like, wait, how, like, what's the rule here? Like, how many times does this piece need to rotate? Or like, and other examples that I guess we should save for people to play because this will be out before the game is out. But there's plenty of examples where it's like, I need to know how this is going to behave because Ivan kind of came up with a concept, or or we even we in one scenario where we both came up with a concept and I'm still like, wait, how does this work? Like, like, or like we came up with a concept like 4 months ago, but now I need to remember how it works. So,
yeah.
and so we were really keen about making sure that we had good documentation for our concepts just moving forward.
Right.
And then also like updating that documentation. I wanted to do more on like in terms of like development documentation and like coding and how the code works. But that just it would have been only for my benefit at that point because I'm the only person doing any of the back end.
Yeah.
So we
I,
all of our
yeah.
documentation really was to serve the the cooperative, collaborative part of efforts of this, which is like, Ivan needs this information from me, I need this information from Ivan or from Will, or from Jordan, our graphic designer,
Mhm,
and that way we have like this very cohesive, thorough set. And yeah, like you said, it was right. It was before we even started production. Really, like we had made our proof of concept. Ivan put together some videos or some test rooms, and then we knew what we needed from there on
mhm,
much. So we just worked around that.
It's remarkably similar to I used to be a systems engineer on some interesting projects, but it's very similar to when you have an engineering team building a physical device. You have to
mm,
you have to define your interface points.
Mm.
mhm,
You can all be working on a different part of it, right? Like one engineer is doing one thing, one engineer is doing another. But like for a mechanical system, for example, you have to define where's the point at which my part of it interfaces with your part. What are the
mhm.
dimensions, parameters? So that's what we focus on in our documentation. Like, yeah.
Yeah. I was actually interested because I was going to ask you, like, what were your guys' backgrounds? Like, what made you, have you always, like, your whole life been interested in stop motion? Like, what made you get into stop motion and kind of get to where you are now to make this project?
You want to go first, Ben?
Well, I'll let you go first because mine isn't really specific to the stop motion
Yours
part
be
of
more
this
gaming.
is more on the gaming. So yeah, because I don't really have any of that background. So I'll let you go.
So the funny thing is, like, I had this vague desire to do animation when I was a kid, but thought that, like, I thought it was very intangible. That there wasn't a way for me to do it. So I ended up doing lots of other random stuff. Like I designed prosthetic hands at one point. Well, first it was puppet hands, then prosthetic hands, then went back to puppetry, and theater design. But my wife is a set designer. I'm her assistant set designer. So yeah, we have a production company here in Ireland, and she's the lead, and I've learned so much from her about set design. So, like, actually, this game was my first time doing my own full set design.
Oh wow!
Where I applied what I've learned from her as her assistant to create my own sets and do those sorts of things. So it was really fun. But as far as animation, it was actually my wife and I getting into it together. Both of us finding out, hey, like she had already done a bit of silhouette stop motion, which is paper on light boxes.
Okay.
And then she showed that to me, and then we decided, hey, let's get more into this. She introduced me to the work of Lottie Reiniger, who was the very first person to make a feature-length animated film that she did before Disney. She invented the multiplane camera that Disney ended up using. Like, amazing person. We managed to find a copy of her book, even though it's out of print. And we got it, and like, his Lottie had, she just made blueprints and, like, gave them away. Like, well, she was probably selling her book back when she was publishing it, but she tells you exactly how to build one of her animation tables and all of her techniques. So we replicated that, and that's how we started getting into stop motion. So we're doing 2D paper silhouette, and then eventually started getting into 3D. So that's
so cool
there. And then it was really just thinking, like, at one point it'd be really fun to make a game. And Ben and I met at his brother's wedding, and he told me he was into game design. I was just like, hey, I've been thinking, like, maybe making a stop motion game. I have no idea what the story would be or anything like that, but if you know, would you ever be interested in that? He was like, yeah. So, but yeah,
that's super rad.
For you, Ben?
I don't really have a background with the stop motion, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of that meeting point. We can work back from the meeting point, right? Like,
sure.
You know, he brings to the table this idea for a, you know, or this kind of dream of a game that's made in stop motion, and I had been, you know, thinking about making games. I have wanted to make games since I don't know how long. I mean, I like some of my first memories are playing like Sonic the Hedgehog on my older brother's Sega Genesis or the Dreamcast or something, handheld one. But I was probably 2. It is probably one of my earliest memories. My dad has made he basically worked for the federal government of the U.S. making basically making training simulations for research purposes, and so we've always just had, like, he at the time when I was born, he was working with, I don't remember if they were using Quake or if they were using Unreal Engine at that point, but we always had, you know, he was always working with game technologies, so I was watching what he was doing and thought that was just like the coolest thing ever. Obviously, your dad hangs the moon for you, especially when you're a kid and you're sitting on his lap and you're watching him make all this crazy stuff. And then you want to do that, right? And so that's all I wanted to do when I was a kid was make games. And then it was reinforced when I was a kid because one of my best friends in elementary school, we learned as probably 4th grade or something. We were in the back of our car and, you know, coming back from, you know, a play date or something, and Abe, my friend, was like, oh, oh, your dad, you know, makes games for the government. That's really cool. My dad also makes games, and I'm like, oh, that's, well, you know, whatever. Like, what kind of games does he make? Like, all being all, like, you know, being that guy about it. And he's like, oh, he made this really cool game. You know, it's old. It's this old game. It's called Myst. and
Oh shit.
and and I was just like, oh, miss, like who the hell cares? It's not Zelda, it's not Halo, like who cares? And then my
Oh,
dad is in the front seat, and he's like, wait, what? What did you just say,
yeah.
kid? Like
You
you
made
said
what?
you missed? What? Like I was playing that game, and then so then I like I learned more about that. Obviously, I like got over whatever bullshit I was on, and he, when I got interested in what he was doing, he was very excited to show me all this cool stuff too, and so he laid out all this like concept art that him and his brother were working on
Wow.
for Mist and Riven, and it just got me like, whoa, like this is like not just some weird stuff that my dad does. This is like this is like some kind of viable thing, which is kind of a wild thing to think. I mean, this is like one of the most successful
Yeah.
things of the 90s,
Right.
right? So it is a little bit insane. And so but I think that was just like, I had these two people who kind of in my life who were kind of role models to me, which is my dad and my friend's dad and this crazy, support, obviously,
Yeah.
to like kind of, like giving me the kind of like freedom to explore those kinds of creative things.
Mhm.
When I got older, I got into programming a little bit in high school, but I just like, I felt so overmatched by it. Like I did not feel like it was so like scary, like getting like graded on code and like and like I just had a hard time learning that sort of environment. I had a really hard time with the classroom programming classes. I did game jams though, starting in like 2012. We would go to, I'd go with my friends to game jams. Even though I was kind of bad at coding, I just liked the the collaborative part of aspect of making games. But I just like couldn't really wrap my head around code for a long time. Eventually I kind of gave up on the dream, and then I like joined the army, went to school, and was just like, I'll give up on this. This was just some silly kid's dream that I had. But then, I got out of college, and I was like starting to think about like getting out of the guard and the Army National Guard, which I was enlisted in at the time. And my brother was like, he had done this coding boot camp. My younger brother did this coding boot camp. And he got a really great job with a healthcare network here in Pittsburgh. And he was like, hey, like, I know you're having a hard time finding work right now in your field. Like, why don't you like think about like, would you ever think about going back and relearning how to code and kind of, maybe you can like make games, or maybe you can just get into web development or something. Like he basically was like, I think you should give this another shot. And so I went and did, and the environment of a coding boot camp is way different than it is and this specific coding boot camp was very different than anything I had experienced in college or in high school. And it was just super, super, really loving, actually. Like very like it was just like a very supportive, supportive environment. It kind of felt like I was in this like union almost of people who were learning this trade, right? They treated it more like, this is not some like academic, esoteric bullshit. Like this is a trade that we need technical workers for. And and it doesn't take a 4-year degree to know and be competent at this. It takes practice, and it takes time, right? And so and all of those people who taught the classes, John Lang and Gene Lang, especially John, I think, were people who didn't do really well in the traditional academic structure of computer science, and so they really wanted to foster like a more kind of inclusive and also just more supportive, right? Kind of way of learning how to code. And I just responded extremely well to it. I mean, I really struggled in school I got my degree, but it was a constant struggle for me to get through and get that. But then going through boot camp, I felt the web developer boot camp, I just was like super reinvigorated, just took in everything as much as I could. And I'm really proud of how I did. I got out of that, immediately got a job as a software engineer for another healthcare network, the competing healthcare network that my brother was working to. And but I didn't get a web development job. I got a telecommunications job. So it was kind of more IT service management. And a little bit of development, but mostly ITSM, I would say. And I worked there for about almost about 2.5 years. And but my wife and I were like kind of talking. We were like, we wanted to travel a little bit. We wanted to do some different stuff. Around this time, when I was getting ready to leave UPMC, my brother was getting married, and Ivan was the officiant. He was my
Oh, wow.
really good, really good buddy of my older brothers, and we all shipped in to fly Ivan into the U.S. for this for the wedding, and at the time, my brother and I, we were just, we were playing around. We made a mobile game together that we weren't intending to make any money off of. We just wanted to see how it would work. And then I was also making this other like kind of Zelda like 3D game, and I was working on that while I was in Bellingham for this wedding. I was just like playing around. I'm like,
Yeah.
and Ivan saw it and he's like, "What are you doing? Like, this is so cool." And and then we were just like talking about the stuff that we were doing. We're like, we should talk more.
Yeah.
He showed me the video that he did for Will Wood with Tomcat Disposables. I was like, whoa, this is really cool. Like, the music is amazing. I'd never heard of Will Wood before. And I'd never seen this music video before. And I was just cracked my world wide open. I was just like, whoa, yeah, this was really cool. And then eventually we just started talking about it later, and we were like, we should absolutely do something collaborative together. And so that's kind of where we started that conversation.
Yeah. It's really I mean, that's one of the things, like when I started this show, like one of the things that I always found more interesting was more about like people. Obviously we're here because we were making games, but I just find people more interesting in their story on how they get to where they are. Yeah. And it's funny because I see similarities and like a little bit of my own story, but like a lot of it is like I've worked in the corporate business world for too long, and I basically hated everything about it. And I was like, guess what? Told my wife, I'm not gonna do that anymore.
Yeah.
and it's like, and ironically, like I even like me and my wife, we met in theater. We both performers, we
really?
do theater. And so like that's how we met. We've been together for what year is it?
2025.
15 years. 15 years now at this point.
Wow.
So it's like
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And then I've been and then IT is what I was doing before. But I've always been like super creative, and I was like, man, I gotta get out of it. I gotta stop doing this. I gotta go get my creativeness going. And but I love to hear like where people find themselves to be like, you know what, I'm gonna do something creative. Because I genuinely think like more people are genuinely more creative, or generally more creative than not.
Absolutely.
And I feel I had a really good used to have a really good mindset coach, and he used to talk a lot about creativity and things like that, and like where you can I'm gonna butcher a lot of what he taught me because I haven't talked to him in a while. I should
That's all right. Give it a shot.
But anyway, it's just a lot about how when we're doing things that are creative, we're much more vibrant, I guess, as people. And like I said, I find the stories interesting. And going back to what I like, why I started this show is just I wanted to hear more about other people and their stories. I'm new at making games, and I was like, I want to hear more about other people's and their story and why they did it and why they're into it. And also, in my opinion, seeing a lot of really cool projects out there, and God willing, this show takes off and they get a ton of wish lists or a ton of attention on their games. And it's just, I believe in all ships rise with the tide type of thing. And, so that's kind of the philosophy. That was a huge, weird digression, but,
cool.
But, I wanted to, how has been a lot of the response to your game so far? Like, what has that been like as far as wish lists or attention? I know you brought up Will Wood, which, like I said, you sent me that trailer, and I was like, Will Wood, who is this guy? And then I started digging down the rabbit hole a little bit. I was like, oh man, okay, this guy's somebody. So
he's a brilliant musician. Like I think, especially since like what we're creating here is effectively an interactive silent film. The thing that makes a silent film like a huge difference in it is the musical score. Like one of my favorite silent films of all time is Metropolis by Fritz Lang, which is a sci-fi epic made in the 1920s. Amazing film. But like part of it is the stunning visuals they came up with and their visual storytelling, but then there's this wonderful musical score that goes with it. So having him involved is excellent. Like and I think that we haven't gotten to show a version of the demo yet with any of his music in it because he's actively writing.
Right.
I have a feeling that when people get to play like a demo or eventually the full game with that musical score combined, it's gonna elicit a very positive response. So
how was getting him on board? Like, because I saw that he had. Did you make the original music video for him? So you're the original creator of the mouse in his music video?
Yeah, so like what it was that so he and I ended up working together on his most recent album, which is called In Case I Make It. And so we collaborated together to create the Tomcat Disposables music video. So I designed the mouse, but like it was a collaborative process as well because we had these goals of making the mouse very cute and lovable, but we wanted the idea was for it to be mechanical in nature. So that was a really fun process, and I think that we told a good story. And again, something close to my heart is, like the mouse doesn't speak. That song does have lyrics though, and it tells the story very effectively. So we had a great time working together on that. And then I get obsessed with things like the mouse as a character was something that I just kept sticking with me. And then I started just messing around. In my hubris, I thought that I could create some sort of weird little interactive experience on TikTok where I would take the mouse, put him in a box, and then do some stop motion and then prompt people to comment and tell me what the mouse did next, and then I would try to animate that. And very few people actually engaged with it the way that I was hoping. So I got a little disheartened, and I was just like, well, what do I really want to do here? And I started thinking about a maze, and I was just like, well, I'd like to actually just make a maze for this mouse to navigate through. And I remembered that I talked to Ben, and Ben, knows something about games. And so I was like, maybe we could do that.
Yeah.
So, and then I reached out to Will to share with him, that I was that I had thought of doing something with the same character and to see if that was okay. And he took a look and was interested in joining, so and that was fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, that's awesome that he's doing the score for the game as well. I mean, that's amazing, obviously, very amazing. And I love how you have very much like a very specific direction. You're like it's a silent film, it's a silent game in a way. It's your own genre. It's a silent game.
Yeah.
And then
to the point where we don't have any even. It's honestly even beyond, right? Because like Metropolis and other silent films have these, cues where you have text to serve as dialogue or narration or something, and like, we don't have any language at all outside of our menus, right? Outside of like interfacing with the menu. We even talked about just like not even doing that, but I think that would just be too far. So that would be a step too far. But yeah, I mean, there's no written language at all in the game.
Yeah.
Everything is conveyed visually, and so it's even kind of beyond that. It is, but you're right. It's kind of its own new thing. I mean, I think like it's not like exactly having like a really archaic, way of communicating with the player and only using visual cues is definitely becoming more and more popular. Though, I mean, you think of like Tunic. I don't know if you played that, but that also has kind of got this kind of its own little esoteric language that it uses, and it's not English. They have some English, but they're pretty cryptic in that game about communicating things to the player in the same way that we're kind of doing here.
And so back, and as far as like the reaction to the public, like what have people been saying? Like what's the feedback been? Like what is it like putting this thing out into the wild and just kind of hearing people talk about it?
Oh, it's so surreal. Oh my God. For me as somebody who's kind of like the newcomer into this world of the, of the mouse, right? And I think Ivan, you probably witnessed this a little bit, and Will has gone through this point too, where people respond to his art, and then they respond to your art, and now they're responding to this game that we put together. It's really, really crazy to see, Will's fans especially like respond so well and connect so much and be so excited. We only put the trailer out yesterday, and like almost like 450 some people have commented on it, and almost all of it is just like, I mean, it's mostly just universal praise and like excitement, and just people are just like, I'm crying right now, like I'm just so excited, I'm crying, or like they're just so floored, and like this is so offsides for Will to like to be involved in a video game that and then now they're like naturally like they've got like subreddits and stuff that they've been active on, to talk about Will's music, but now they're talking about this game, and to watch those conversations happen, and to see like this thing that Ivan and I have been making primarily just like for a long time, just between the two of us, right? Like, because for a long time it was just us making this, and then we had Will get involved with the music, and he's been getting more and more involved as we go along. But it's really crazy to see like Éalú mentioned in the wild, like without us talking about it. That's crazy. It's mind blowing, and it's super, super gratifying. And I hope that we satisfy those people and
deliver.
I hope that those people resonate with the game the same way we do, or in a way that I hope that it is, I mean, at the end of the day, like, I'm happy with what we're making, but I hope that those people are adequately satisfied with what we're making.
And yeah, that's a good thing to bring up too, because one of the things that has been really nice about this project as it's developed is that Will, Ben, and myself have all contributed to the writing of the game in terms of story and how we're handling the character and how we're taking care of this character. Because the mouse, as a result of the first story that it was in, a lot of people developed a lot of fondness for it.
Yeah.
And so, that's something that like Will really pointed out that was very important for us to be mindful of it and to take care of in terms of how we approach the story. And I feel really good about how that's changed. And as things evolved, and we all have contributed to where this story has ended up as far as the way it's taken shape, it's ended up becoming like a spiritual sequel to the story told in the Top Cat Disposables music video.
Cool.
So we are now, we're making it canon that this is the same mouse.
Yeah.
So this is the same mouse having a different adventure, different experience, and having an opportunity at a happy ending.
Okay.
So I don't want to say anything in particular about the video in case people haven't, the music video in case people haven't seen it. But so that's kind of where we're going with this now, and I'm really excited for that.
That's cool. So, like giving another conclusion to something that was very beloved. And like you said before, like you're like, I was so obsessed with this mouse essentially, and I guess in a way you felt like the story wasn't over, and which led you down this path.
And it seems like a lot of people that saw that music video ended up connecting with the mouse in a similar way, which is funny because like I feel very connected to the mouse because I've spent so much time animating the mouse.
Of course.
Right. But it's really beautiful to me that there's people out there that also feel connected to this character. So being respectful of that, and as Ben said, trying to hopefully deliver something that is a satisfying experience for them in the context of this character and the story is really important to us.
Yeah. So what defines success once we launch? How do we define that? Like, the game comes out, it does whatever metric you guys, it doesn't necessarily even have to be sales. I've talked to people that are like, just releasing it and I'm successful, I'm good. Or is there what's your guys' definition right now of success?
I have a strong one that I don't know if I've shared with you yet, Ben. Like, I've been thinking about this a lot, but okay. I'm happy to go second, or like whatever you like.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead. I'll chime in eventually.
Okay. I think about this a lot with projects. So my wildest dream success for this game and what we're doing, if I thought about like the one thing that I could really come away from it with, would be because there's a lot of philosophy and a lot of things that we've kind of tried to build into the story and what happens in this maze with the mouse. And this is very it's kind of wild thinking on my part, but I would love it if this became something that for some people that play it becomes for them what playing Myst was for me when I was young, or encountering a book like Dune, right? Like or like Lottie Reiniger's animations were for my wife when she first saw those animations, right? Like something that people think about after they're done playing it, and has an impact, like causes them to think deeply about what it was that they experienced, what it might mean, even if their interpretation of it is different than what we intended, right? But if it ignites that sort of thought process in a lot of people, for me that would be wild success. Like, yeah.
I love that so much. Sorry, I had to say that because it like you shocked me, because it's like I had that exact experience with something specific and why it launched me into my own journey. And it was you guys might find this silly, but me traveling, I basically my wife was gone for a little bit, and I was redoing her office or something like that, and I had a little bit of time or whatever, and I finally watched the show Arcane. You guys, have you seen?
Oh yeah. Love Arcane.
I
So,
haven't
like,
watched much of it yet, but
love it.
I'm not a big League of Legends person anyway. Like
Neither am I.
anything, but so I randomly turned it on. I like CGI, or like I love 3D modeling, and I'm kind of an art nerd anyway. So I randomly turned it on, and I could not stop watching that show.
It's so good.
And it was not
It's incredible.
like from the music to the art to the story to everything, the way that show brought everything, all of its elements together. It was like the spark that I was like, I gotta stop doing what the fuck I'm doing. I'm like, this is it. I'm like,
Yeah,
I
you
gotta
gotta do something
stop,
else. Yeah.
and I gotta do something creative.
Yeah.
Because I cannot, like, just wanting to make something that can inspire somebody else to do something creative.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, that's it. That's what I want. That's what I want. And so that's what launched me. So hearing your story going like, I would love to someone play this. Like, it's like to go through it and be like, oh my God, I want to do something like this too, and inspire them to make the cat.
Yeah.
Metaphor,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like to make, like just to make something that they are, and so you inspire them so much to
Even
to
if
go
it's
on to
just
their
like,
own-
even if it's just, like fan art or something, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Just something, right? Like, just like,
yeah,
I see so much of that on Will's, on Will's communities, right? They just make so much art around, this musician who is really fantastic, but his effect and on the creativity of his fans is really interesting. And I was gonna say something kind of similar actually, Ivan, on that. Like,
that's funny.
I like our metric, I think, has changed a lot, right? In terms of
Right.
like,
Yeah.
we can talk a lot about like, oh well, we'd love to sell like 1,000 copies of the game, or we'd like to sell
Right.
1,000 keys, but it's like, at the end of the day, like, if I think we'd be happy if those people who are commenting and are excited and are voicing so much support, if they're inspired to keep making their own fan art of the mouse, or their own wood carving of the mouse or something, right? Like, even if it's just that, or or if it's extreme enough for them to be like, I want to make like I want to make a stop motion film that's my own, or I want to make music that's similar to Will's, or I want to explore music, right? Like, that I think is a massive win, and I don't think it's less tangible. Like, it's maybe harder to measure, but like, we can talk about numbers all day, right? We can sit and hypothesize and sit around, and I really don't like to talk about it too much, like, because it sounds really, I think the thing that worries me about is it sounds really grounded. It sounds real, like it's numbers are real, and we can measure them very easily,
Right.
but we can also just make them up, You know? And we can sit here and make shit up all day and make it sound really real, but at the end of the day, like we haven't sold the game yet, and we don't know. We can do everything right. We can do all the marketing we want to do. We can market on Reddit and get all these upvotes. We can release YouTube videos. We can get tons of wish lists, and the day we release, just so happens that GTA 6 gets released or something, and or something happens, right? Like power outage happens or something. Like you just don't know, or a new Microsoft Cloud error happens or something, or just for whatever reason people just don't feel like spending the money, and so you can do everything right and still not have that work for you financially. And so it's like, why worry about, like, why make that the measurement when that's so intangible? And it's like, I think it'd be better to just like engage with people who are playing your game and see what effect it has on them, and see if they enjoy it and engage with it in the way that you anticipate or that you hope that they do, or maybe they got something different from the game than you expected. And are they going to make fan art of your characters or something like that's crazy. So that's that. Yeah, if we see more fan art come from Will's subreddit or the incoming Éalú subreddit that will happen someday, or whatever communities emerge from this, or we see more people just be inspired to make games or film or get involved in theater or make music, like that, I think is I think maybe we just have to stay in touch with our fan base if we want to measure if we want to measure that metric, and I think that's how what I would like to do, at least in terms of measuring our success. That being said, we're going to keep an eye on our wish lists. We're going to try to do everything. We're going to do everything we can to make this a viable a viable commercial product. But but I think that I think that we want to be a little bit more grounded with our goals when it comes to, like, who are we making this for? So
and I think it's perfectly reasonable to say I'd like it to be able to support my future endeavors in some capacity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
what I was saying earlier was, I want this, if I make enough money to buy a new tool for making games, like if I get enough money to like buy like a Maya license or a Unity Pro license, then that's a huge win, right?
Yeah.
That's not a lot, it's like enough. If I can have that for a year, then that's a win,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think I think some people forget that, making games it's a massive piece of art. It's a huge piece of art.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can go down trying to make it the most commercially viable piece of art. Yeah. And you might make some money doing that. And then you'll make the next commercially viable piece of art. And then, you can keep going down that path. But those are the things that's kind of the road. And one of your answers, but that's kind of the road that feels like AAA has gone down. If they've continued to go down the most commercially viable piece of art. And I feel like the players, or the people, the consumers us, the gamers, have kind of gone on keen to it. And we're like, hey, wait a second. Like, this isn't what I want. Like, this doesn't have any soul. It has no feeling. It doesn't feel like somebody actually cared to actually make something that they actually cared about. It just seems like, okay, well, how do we monetize every single little aspect of this thing to make sure that it's 100% beneficial for us to even make, or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's why, like,
there are some, I guess there's like AAA, and now there's like kind of like AA games, right? Like, like Larian is like kind of like they're independent, but they're kind of a AA game. They've made, I mean, they really poured, I mean, every developer put so much of themselves into that game, and it really shows, right? But they put, I mean, tremendous amount of money and a tremendous amount of man hours into that art, right? And it feels as polished as a AAA game, right? But it clearly has that just that heart.
Well, I mean, that was one of those things that, I mean, it was such a breath of fresh air to get Baldur's Gate, because you're just like, you have all this crap, and all of a sudden you get this behemoth of a game, like so much content. I'm a huge D&D nerd too, so it's like I'm playing it and I'm going, dude, this game, you can do anything in it. I'm like, I at least generally feel that way. I would have loved to enchant my own weapons, but whatever. You're there. But anyway, but in general, it was such a full experience.
Yeah.
And for what they charged, there was nothing extra. They weren't charging you anything extra for it.
Yeah.
It was a full product. Here you go, play it, enjoy it. And it just felt so fulfilling to actually play that type of game. And I mean, I've said this before too. It's just like, yeah, that Baldur's Gate, obviously.
Yeah, I think that for every, I guess my point with that is I think for every like negative trend in the industry, or like a negative example that I can think of, even like 10 years ago, there's always been like an equally an equally an equal force for good, right, in the industry that's making stuff that that is really soulful, that is really evocative and interesting and fun, right? Like there was a while there where it was like kind of weird to like talk about like fun.
Yeah.
And like, why can't we talk about that? That is something we can measure, you know what I mean? And like I don't know. So I think that there's always going to be, companies that are just going to exploit, right? Nostalgia. They're going to exploit, just like everybody wants to buy, the new Call of Duty every year or whatever. And I'm not going to talk too much shit about those games if those are important to people, right? But I'll talk a little bit of shit. But but those can get pumped out, and they do kind of exploit that, this like very constant, user base, and but then there's also many examples of big studios like Larian, or or even like publishing companies that kind of recruit smaller indies to make things like Mobius, right? Like it's they're going to be working on their next game as well. And I'm sure that will be incredible and buck all the trends that that we're seeing, because that's what they do. So
I think some of it can come down to when you end up with so much money in any artistic discipline, then the willingness to take risk can get diminished. Like Larian took a big risk and it paid off, which is great. But I think there's a lot of aversion to risk. Like whereas like for us as a team, right, where we have very little of our own cash into this, we're like, one of our constraints that we talked about at the beginning is, okay, we're going to use the tools that we already have, right? I've spent a little bit of money on wood, right, and like various materials, that sort of thing, but nothing huge. So we've been working with the tools that we have, so we can do this weird thing where we're going to like make an entire stop motion game, right? But like, because like if we fall on our face, we don't have a bank that we owe money to, right? Like, or because when you have these big sources of funding, those end up with there are terms attached. I think that can constrain. It's funny, we have our own constraints, but we don't have the constraint of like fear that failure to have a positive outcome of our creative process is going to ruin a company financially.
Right. True.
Right. Like, so you can see that in the film industry too. Like if you look at like if you look at how like the first Terminator film was done, they were like filming in alleys without proper licenses. Like they had like very little budget. They were just doing it, right?
Yeah.
But also at that stage, that franchise didn't have as much risk, like because it was the first thing that they were doing.
Exactly.
So there's some advantages to being small and being in the space that we're in.
Yeah, and you could say the only thing that we're risking is our time, but at the end of the day, like even if this like fails, so to speak, which already, in my opinion, it hasn't, because we, I mean, the only way this could fail is if we didn't release the game, which is just not going to happen. We're going to.
You're right.
But I mean, we spent so much time working on this, and it does not feel like a waste in any way, right? Like even if that crazy eventuality were to occur, which is, not going to happen. But I mean, it still wouldn't be a waste of time, right? To me, like I've learned so much about game dev in the last 9 months. And I've learned so much about stop motion. I've learned a lot about Ivan as a friend and as a man, and I've met Will and gotten to know him and made this great connection and learned more about his music and got involved. So like none of what we have done, even if nothing were to come of this, which would be an insane thing to happen at this point. Right? It would take massive catastrophe for that to occur. Like, even if that were to happen, it would not have been a waste. It would not have been a waste of effort. You know what I mean?
You're right about how much we've learned together. Like it's been phenomenal. Like, yeah. I think we've each probably sunk more than 1,000 hours into this so far. And that's a lot of time and practice, and it's been really cool. Like the whole process has been really enjoyable. I think in a way, when we finish this game, it's going to feel weird. I'm going to probably feel like a little mopey for a little while because I won't have it to work on. Like, you know, because it's working on it is a lot of fun.
I'm starting to feel like the mouse. Like I had this moment a few weeks ago. I was working on. I just finished the last puzzle. You know, like two weeks ago, I finished the last puzzle, and we're starting to get into the last parts of the maze, and there is like a part of me while I'm working on it where I'm just like, oh my god, like
oh no,
so close. We're so close to the end. Like I can see the light. And it's like, not to spoil anything about the game, but it's like, it's like I'm feeling this like glimmer of hope, but I'm having less anxiety about like not having something to work on. I'm just like, wow, I'm almost out of this maze. It's wild. But I mean, obviously it's a positive, but it's been really interesting, and we are kind of developing it because we are making this like a film. It is being developed kind of linearly, right? Like, so not a particularly linear game, but now we are, now that we're at the end of it, we're kind of making these final scenes, and they are chronologically the last things that the player will see because we've been building out essentially from the center of the maze. So it's been really interesting.
I like that what you guys were just talking about as far as like even no matter what outcome, the journey you've taken. I've said this before, but it's just like the hero's journey. You know what I mean? When making a game, especially going out on your first time or stuff like that, it's like you're setting out on a quest and you don't know everything that you're going to encounter. So you pack and you prepare everything that you think you might encounter. You have the tools and things that that you know how to use, and then you just go. And then you're going to stumble, you're going to fail, you're going to fall back, you're going to have to pick up, you're going to have to go a different way, you're going to have to do all these different things as you continue down that journey, and that journey being game devs. And that can be anything. It could be you going to college. It could be anything in life, you know what I mean? And that's the way I look at everything, and that I've done in my life, which is just very much don't compare yourself where you are right now. You always have to look at where you've come from, because where you've come from is always a much more improvement than where you were before. And it's like the things you've learned to get to where you are is just, I mean, it's incredible. And I like
that's
that.
very well put. It is. It's been a journey, and I'm glad to have been a part of it, and I have been, and we've still got journey to go. But we are not at the end of it. If this was a mountain that we were climbing, if we were climbing to the peak of a mountain, we've set up camp on the glacier, but we've still got there's a lot of mountain between us and the peak still, like we've made through a lot of the worst part of it, but there's still some big challenges ahead, So, but we know what we're facing. We've got a good chart, we got a good course, and it's going to be, these next parts are going to be interesting too. So, we've learned a ton about, I think each of our respective disciplines, in this journey. And I mean, I definitely learned a lot about how there's a lot of lessons that I've learned, and like, okay, I would never do this ever again on the code, right? I'm never going to code this way ever again. So if we get a chance to make more stuff in the future like this,
Yeah.
There's going to be some major adjustments,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Well, and I'm curious, have you guys started rumbling about anything next, since we're getting close to or we're just like, let's just
Not
get
really.
over the mountain and
Yeah.
see what happens.
we're gonna see. I think we probably won't even have that conversation until after we've released the game. It might not
Yeah.
even be for a couple months after we release the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to go. One of the goals and one of a potential metric for success is I'd like to go to Ireland to visit Ivan
Oh,
in
cool.
person, and
Yeah.
and I almost went in March, because Ivan got a place at the Dublin Comic Con for Éalú.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
And we were both stoked for it. But I had literally just got to the United States,
Oh,
and
no.
and I was like, oh no, I have to buy another plane ticket. I'd just been traveling for like a year, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my god, like how am I gonna get back? And then immediately go on a plane, like
Yeah.
and it was just but it worked out, and Ivan got a lot of good feedback on it.
That's awesome.
So yeah, my goal is to go to Ireland once we released, and we'll see what happens from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but as far as like other games or that sort of thing, I have no idea. This is the first full game that Ben's made. But he's done other game dev before. This is the first game I've ever made,
Mhm.
right? Like, if we should be so lucky that there's an opportunity to make something in the future, maybe we'll do that. But like, our head is just really completely wrapped around what we're doing.
I do have a million. I've got a million games in the chamber. You know what I mean? Like I've done game jams all the time, but your ideas are only worth so much, right? Like it's all about the collaboration. That's essentially what matters. And because you can't do it all people do it all themselves, but I don't really see the benefit of that, So for myself, I mean, if somebody
what
else,
do they say the saying is, if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go with people, or something like that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny, Ben. When I started thinking about like wanting to create a maze and make it interactive, and all that, before I remembered our conversations when we met, when we met in Washington, I looked at some like game engines, and I was like poking around. I was like, what would it take for me to do this? And I looked, I was like, I don't know the first thing about what I'm doing. What it would take for me to do this is to find somebody that knows how to do this.
Yeah.
That I can work well with, and see if they would if they would do it with me. And that's when I was like, oh, I should reach out to them.
Yeah.
Because that whole thing, I was like, okay, maybe I could learn how to do this, and I could learn how to do this badly.
Yeah.
And do it by myself.
Yeah.
Right. Like, because I don't have the time to get proficient enough.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, so I agree. Like finding a good collaborative team is.
And on that note, if we can pivot to the the kind
We can do whatever we want.
to the tech, like some of the back end stuff that we've done. I mean, we talked a little bit about when we started off, like what engine are we going to use, like what technologies are we going to use, and stuff like that. And we really just landed on Unity because mostly just because that's what I've been working with for a long time. And also because I have seen people. I mean, it would be interesting. And I talked to my brother. My brother's gives me a lot of good critique on my code because he's a developer in the industry and not in the game industry.
Nobody ever sees the code. Who cares?
Right. Well, that's what I say, man.
Nobody ever sees
as long
it.
as they won't see it as long as it works, right?
Yeah,
like,
it's true. There you go.
As long as it works. No. I mean, so he was like, well, what? This is like, you're just got an array. It's like, why don't you just have this on like a WebGL? I'm like, yeah, but then you gotta lock the cursor into this space, and then you gotta package it for Steam, and it's like, there's all this bullshit you gotta do, and no shade on anybody who makes those, goes down that path, like the Animal Well. I think you had somebody on your show as well who made their own engine. That's crazy amount of work, massive dedication. If you're doing that solo, on top of it, everything else you're doing solo, props, man. That ain't me.
Well, it came down to because I know it's conversations. same thing that we've just been talking about. He just did what he knew.
Right.
You know, he didn't know any engine or anything like that. So he was like, I'm just gonna do what I know.
Right.
And then that's what happened.
Yeah,
So
we'll work with
sorry,
the
go
tools that
ahead.
we got. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I was just like, like this is a weird use case for Unity, right? Because there's like we don't have like a physical space here, right? We just have like video players and a couple sprites and a UI, but that's it, right? Like like my brother was very right in his assessment. Is like you could do this on a web page, right? Like absolutely. And you probably could absolutely.
Yeah.
Might work better, right? But like maybe somebody who's a little bit more of a, I haven't really touched web development since I did that boot camp. So I haven't really done, I've done a little bit of HTML, CSS. I've done a little bit of, of those of like React and stuff, but I'm not like a guru at that. Like, but I've been making, I make games in my spare time. I don't write APIs. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
right.
So yeah, I mean, we were just like, let's just see what we can do with Unity. And if I can talk a little bit about, what we're doing in Unity for any of the, for anybody who's interested, is that we're kind of got, it's a little bit ugly. It's not, it might not be optimized the way it could be, but what we've essentially got is, a video player, right? That is projecting to the to the main camera in Unity. And that canvas, we have a UI canvas in Unity as well, with all of these buttons, right? So like there's a button that overlays like one of the doors, or like one of the or a physical button in the space, right? And though they're just invisible, we can when we move the mouse over them, we can shift the cursor to a different icon, so you can click on something. So we have this UI canvas, we have our video player, and then we kind of found out that there was an issue with when we had, the mouse. We have a video of the mouse entering a room, and then we have the mouse idling, switching between those animations. There's like a little bit of lag with the video player. And so we had to make, okay, not only do we need to have the video player, but we also need to have a background image that is also being projected to the main camera. So in the event that the video player doesn't have anything to play, it can flash that image of like the last frame of that video, so that it looks smooth, right? Because consistently what would happen is like, okay, the video player is done with this video, it has nothing to play while it's cute, like that one like frame doesn't have anything to play, so we need to flash some image. So there's like a little bit of latency, and it's indistinguishable, when you're watching it play out in the space. But before, it was like you get this like flash of black, right? And so we did that. We learned that we had to fix our frame rate down to the frame rates of the videos, right? We have 24 frames per second in the videos. So we have to artificially fix that in Unity. Say nope, we are capping it at 24 frames per second so that it works. All of these different layers also need to be like, they need to be at the exact same, aspect ratio and resolution. We had some problems with that. And then there's also now, with the UI canvas, we also have these sprites that are overlaying, in the room with the heart, for example, right? There's two sprites that represent the individual heart pieces, and they have animators that determine what state that the heart is in. And so, so those also need to be scaled appropriately. So there's all this scaling and kind of setup stuff that we have to do. We had to, learn to make this. The biggest mistake that I made with this, that I'm still paying for a little bit, but I'm committing to it, is that each room is its own script. Each room is its own scene in Unity. So we don't have like, and each script has an array of videos that it's associated with. So there's a lot of, I've kind of unintentionally, what I should have done, and viewers who are game developers, who are programmers, may have already learned this lesson, or they should learn this from me telling them now. You make a proof of concept, and I had thought that I had refactored adequately. You got to really think about scaling. For me right
Mhm.
now, it's perfect because it's just me. I know exactly where the
Oh, yeah.
blind spots are. I know exactly how my scripts work. So if I need to make a change, if I'm got one script that does this and another script that's got one script that's got 2 rooms, one script that's got 3 rooms, and this other script has, or excuse me, 2 doors and 3 doors, and this room has, 2 doors and a button interface. Like I
Yeah.
know where everything needs to go to make that all work smoothly because I'm the only
Mhm.
engineer on the team. But
Right.
you're working with 2 people or 3 people, this wouldn't work. It would just not be scalable. And that being said, it's also only scalable because we've got, it sounds like a lot, 100 some rooms, but in reality, like it's a fairly small space.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the big lesson that I've learned is that we had this working proof of concept, but what I really should have done was pared it down even further and made okay, well, like let's just have like one array or one like a dictionary or something of all of the video clips in the game. And there's no real reason to have like 90 scenes in this game or 90 different scripts doing all the different rooms. It's super repetitive and makes a ton of technical debt. But you know what? At some point you got to commit, and that's
Mhm.
where we're at. And but it still works. I mean, the amazing thing about it is that it still works so smoothly, right? That's part of the reason why I had no interest in going back and
Yeah.
making a new framework, was because I was just like, this this demo area that we made, everything is working so smoothly. Like we have got like 1% of the time we've got a bug or
Mhm.
less, you know. And so it works. So I think that, like, all that to say, like, you have to have like this balance of like very bravely make whatever code you can, as long as you get it working, and learn
Mhm.
along the way. But make sure you learn right
Yes.
along the way, right?
Yes.
Like this is a lesson that I'm learning, and I will definitely apply in the future. But I think a lot of people are really intimidated by coding, and because there's so much, there's so many people that think they have the right answer of how to do something, and
Mm.
anybody can look at your project and be like, well, I would have done it this way. It's like, well, they didn't do it. You did your project. Like you
Mhm.
made this. It's your thing, and that's okay. It's art. It's a little bit of science, but it's mostly art. And so
Mhm.
like it works. That's what you need to kind of strive for, and learn where learn where the problems are with scalability and stuff later.
Yeah.
So if I can, okay, I'll get off my technical soapbox for a minute.
No, I mean, I love
I
that
like
because
it.
it's like you don't first. Sorry, Evan. I'll do one thing and then I'll let you go.
Oh, sure.
But one of the things I was just going to say is, like, when you start building something, and if it's working, you just continue to move forward, and by the time you realize, like, you've done already too much, you kind of go, I could have done that a different way. But
Yeah.
the time it's going to take me to kind of redo or reorganize all this, like our program, our files in our game, I'm kind of like, God, I want to clean this up so bad, but I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's worth it.
Yeah, that's the other benefit that we have. I mean, we've been so organized with this, right?
Mm.
And I'm glad that we've done that, at least.
Mhm.
Like I mean, that's one thing that I think you fall back to your, to your organization and to your, you know, your other, links in the chain. And yeah, like, we have this kind of, clunky, we have some kind of clunky code for sure.
Mm.
But the organization of our project is so tight, and
Mm.
so well documented that it's like, well, like this is
That's
working
awesome.
within the scope of what we have. So, um, so I think it's fine, but I've definitely learned a lot about,
Mhm.
you can't just, it's like making everything into a mono behaviors is not, there's a reason why people don't do that. Like,
Mm.
and, yeah, so it's good to learn those lessons, and it's kind of fun to get into
Yeah.
into those systems. So yeah, yeah. But
Sorry, Ivan, I didn't mean to cut you off earlier.
Oh no! All I was saying is that I was just going to comment that I like his technical soapbox. So I like your technical soapbox, Ben.
Oh,
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
I can.
No, but the same thing happens to me with animation, with like learning what I would do the next time around. It's kind of like the mouse puppet that I have for the game is different than the puppet that I created when I animated Tomcat Disposables.
Mm.
specifically because so I animated that like over 6 minute long music video at 24 frames per second, and there were things about my puppet that were hard to animate.
Mm-hmm.
Like its wheelbase was a little too narrow, so sometimes it would fall over when I was trying to move it. Just various little details. It was a little small, like making it a little bit bigger makes it a little easier. So when I made this version of the mouse, this one it's thicker, it's got a wider wheelbase, it's 125% scale compared to the original, right? And now this time around too, and then with this one, I'm just like, these are the things that I learned, like, oh, this is how I could improve the puppet. But it's like, but if I knew those things by the time that we had done like a dozen rooms. But if I had decided to improve the puppet, I would have had to throw out those dozen rooms and start over from the beginning, because if I visually change the puppet, well, then I've got to redo everything.
Mm-hmm.
So same thing with the way that I constructed the sets and like some of the various things, but it's just like that. Like there's certain things that are illuminated to you through the process of doing a thing, and then you just carry those forward to the next project that you do.
Yeah.
But it is important to do those things. Like,
oh yeah,
you do have to get into the weeds and make those mistakes. Yeah.
That's when you learn. Well, that's 100% when you learn something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't learn by succeeding through life.
No. Or it's so easy.
Yeah. Oh, life was so easy, and I made it to the end. I didn't. Funny enough, I didn't learn anything. Yeah. Oh,
and
man.
yeah, I mean, to kind of circle back to that, like that whole point, like I don't think that anything we could do here would be a waste of time, because we just learned so much. I mean, that's what this whole thing has been about, and it's been super fun, and we've got more stuff to learn too. I'm really curious. I mean, we've started to dip our feet into the marketing part of the game now too. I should say Ivan is doing most of the marketing at this point now that we're kind of doing less, we have less new sets to build. Sorry, Ivan.
Oh yeah, no, that's fine. No, I think there is like, and if you mean like doing it, it's me just kind of stumbling around and pushing. Like what I would like, I feel like I'm just kind of pushing buttons in the dark. You know, I don't necessarily know exactly what I'm doing. It's like, okay, I'm gonna go read an article on how to write a press release. Like that sort of thing, and then try to put one together.
That's what ChatGPT's for.
Oh my goodness, yeah. I was tempted. Like, I was hoping to like figure out how to write one, and so I'm playing with that sort of thing. But I think the main thing is just seeking to have. My main goal with marketing, let's say, as it were, because I don't have much of a social media presence. I don't intend to, like we don't have like a page specifically for this game or a website. I don't really want to. Like, I know it's weird because like that's what you're supposed to do, but I just don't want to. Like, and so instead of what I'm trying to do is like hopefully find opportunities like what we have here. I was really happy when you messaged me on Reddit. It's like, oh, this is an opportunity to go have a conversation with someone. So I'm sending out emails. I'm putting like I'm contacting people, but the goal is contacting people to see if there's somebody that has an interest of like having a cool conversation, and then we can have a cool conversation. That's my main goal with that, and then hopefully those conversations will resonate with people, and we'll be so lucky that people will then be like, cool, I want to go wishlist this game. And check out what they're doing.
Well, if you find anyone, let me know. Literally, the 100% the reason why I started this show is because I had struggled finding anybody that wanted to have any sort of long form conversation about why I made a video game.
Yeah, I think this is really great. I think that is something that there isn't enough of. I think I might have talked to you about this when you called me the first time. Was, there's a couple of like game dev podcasts that I've listened to, but they're few and far between, and they're not with a lot of like really small devs. It's with a lot of game devs after they've released a really, really successful commercial product like Outer Wilds. I've listened to a couple podcasts from those dev teams, but which that's great, but and there should be more of that too. But they're definitely, there's not even enough of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's true.
And there's definitely not enough of people who are really small or like just starting out, you know.
Yeah.
And it is kind of a new thing. I thought about doing like Twitch streaming to do like to like just get some interest, but I also don't know. That's super intimidating, being live on
It's
camera.
weird.
And
Yeah.
it's super weird, like talking to people that are in
Yeah.
chat and stuff would be, it sounds really intimidating. And like, what if there's
Yeah.
people that, you know, there's a lot of like, you know, insecure voices in my head about that are like, what if they think my code is shit, which, you know, is,
Well,
you know, but
I
like,
try. It's awkward. It's
Yeah, it's
definitely
awkward.
awkward.
I
Yeah.
found I found people were surprisingly kind. I did a little. I every once in a while I have no schedule. I'm sporadic. Like I made a TikTok a while back mainly to try and create this interactive experience that I thought I could create, and I didn't, and I failed at creating on that platform. So every once in a while I'll just like when I'm animating, I'll just live stream animating,
Mm.
and it is awkward. I don't know what to say, so I just ramble. But then people are surprisingly kind. Like, you know, I think part of it though is like I'll say like I don't know what I'm I'm you know so but also yeah it's a strange feeling like because you can't, there's people that are watching, you can't actually see them or talk to them like
Yeah.
there's text, but it's yeah, it's a weird thing. I would very happily like I'd happily show up to like happily show up to like some sort of venue somewhere and physically hang out and animate. If there were people that wanted to just hang out in the room with me while I was animating, in
Yeah.
person, that would be still strange. But because you know, I would think that for me, watching somebody stop motion animate without doing it myself would be kind of like watching paint dry.
Yeah.
But that's not to discount that for some people like that, right? I guess there are things that I like to watch other people do. That the person doing it might be like, why do you want to watch me do this? But I think it would be a nicer experience to have that live interaction,
Yeah.
than the sort of disconnected one.
Yeah.
Um,
The anonymous audience. I think that's
Yeah.
that's nerve wracking. I think people are so
Yeah,
much
so
people are a lot more charitable in person are online.
Yeah.
I mean,
No.
obviously they can be very lovely online too. If you foster that environment, but it can be a challenge to do that. You know.
Yeah.
So I experimented with that a little bit, but it's not like a thing that I plan on doing a lot of.
You make
Yeah.
the Ivan stop motion animation sideshow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of
I
sounds
mean, I
dope.
like watching people detail cars for no reason at all.
Hey,
I don't know. It's
yeah,
relaxing to me.
Yeah.
I just like to watch it.
Yeah.
Oh, sure, absolutely, yeah. Like you know, trying to think if I've got one.
There was a person that was in our academy that did in the web development academy that also was interested in doing games, actually released a game on Steam and was kind of lamenting this like process of like marketing a game and getting like finding like a following and stuff, because it's so hard. We're very lucky to have Will you know, as part of this project because we're working with somebody who kind of has you know, people who already really love his music and are really looking forward to hear from him and to collaborate with him you know, really closely. So there already is like this kind of like active audience to some degree, but that's a tough thing to find in games. It's a very saturated market and I think it's really I think it's really disheartening for people who make games because you know, I think we all have this kind of like voice in our head that wants to be successful and wants to have you know, wants to be able to support their family or you know or you know, in what they're doing and be able to do what they want to do and not just work, you know, a soul crushing office job or a hard labor job, you know. And so but yeah, it's tough to find that audience, but you know, a lot of the things that you know that were being expressed by the instructors and the you know the experienced people and sort of the most supportive people in that boot camp, you know, again, it is wild that community because it is so much like a union, and once you're out of it, even though you're not a student anymore, like everybody still keeps in touch and and is
that's cool.
posting about
That's cool.
jobs they've got and opportunities, recruiting opportunities and stuff. It's very unique in that way among like a lot of the tech bootcamp stuff that's popped up. But one of the instructors was coaching this person about like opening up a Twitch stream and like trying to like gain an audience, like not just by making games, but like as a person, right, who's doing a thing.
Right.
People watch on Twitch, they'll sit and watch. They will watch paint dry, right? If you make a live video of paint drying,
I'm sure
somebody will watch it. Probably.
They got people sleeping. People watch people sleeping. It's
it's
strangest stuff. People
Yeah.
are anyway.
Yeah. Not to digress. But yeah, there's some wild stuff on there. And but I think that one of the things that is growing is kind of like the coding and game development stuff on Twitch. The art stuff, the art side of it, something like what Ivan does is like there's a lot of different really interesting creators on that platform and on other streaming platforms and stuff that are doing that, like just playing guitar or like loop pedaling or like painting or making pottery or something. Like there's tons of stuff like that. So I think the game dev side of it, it's also the other thing with games is that it is such a long form of art. It takes ever to make a game. It can take years to make a game, and it's so complex. And so you don't really get that like constant reiteration, right?
Yeah.
Like a constant iteration that you get when you're doing a skill like ceramic or something. You go through 1,000 pots in a few months. If you're working to become a potter or a sculptor, and you have to really artificially give yourself that iteration with games. Like you have to do game jams, you have to do small scope all the time. And it's really it's a challenge to do that and to limit your scope that way. So
I think it's so encompassing, I think, is why, because it encompasses so many different art forms. It's not just, I've said this before, but it's not just like making a painting or whatever, like you just said, ceramics. It's just that one tactile type of skill. Well, when making games, it's like, okay, we have coders, we have artists, we have music, we have sound, we have then you got to add the whole business element inside of it. We got to do marketing, we got to do the logistics, we got to do, there's just so many different elements that can have to be incorporated into making a game that it's not unlike anything else, and then people get to interact with your art. That's the other part of it too, where they get to actually interact with it. It's not just something they stare at or look at or sit on the shelf.
They can break it every day, like like a pot that you can just like throw against a wall. And then you have to like stare at that, like, what the fuck did you just do to my work? Like, what?
It's so true.
It's so weird to watch people break your stuff. I don't know, and it's really weird, and I think that's because you just don't have that feedback, and you don't have that iteration. It's a tough. I think ultimately too, that's partly why there really aren't any like solo devs. Like in reality, they wind up having to get some support at some point, right? Like
through a publisher, or they outsource certain aspects,
right?
Or,
that's
like they're not like
full
full-time solo dev.
Right. Billy Basso just did Animal Well, and I forget the name of his marketing person. I mean, he had also all these other people who were supporting. I mean, he did all of this engine and all this art and the music and this amazing game mechanics. I mean, that all the game is Billy, but that wouldn't have been possible without he's got a girlfriend who's supporting him, who's also into games and can give him this feedback. He also had worked in games. He'd been making games, mobile games and stuff, and he had some of that iteration before. So he's kind of in a way, he's kind of already like a master of his craft, and not just some nobody coming from nowhere, right? Like, I mean, people don't know who he is until he makes Animal Well, but he really has been honing this skill as professionally for a while now, and then on top, but he still didn't have enough skills to do this, to release that game all by himself. I mean, he needed somebody to help him with the marketing.
Well, he's a publisher, right?
He's got a publisher, and then
Yeah.
he went to Video Game Donkey, and then, but I forget that he actually has like a person who did all the marketing for him and kind of hooked him up with some of the, and ultimately I think got him in contact with the Big Mode, you know, the new publishing company that Donkey made. So so yeah, there's all this other support that happens. I think that, you know, I think a lot of people who are getting into it and think they can just like, I can do this all myself. It's like, maybe like take a step back and see what else they had. It wasn't just them sitting at a keyboard and making, and they just made a game. There was a lot of other support that they had. And
For sure.
so you can seek that out, and ultimately it is like making connections like this and like sitting down and talking to people about what you do. Like, we would never have made this game or done any of this if Ivan and I were shy about talking about like what at an event that had nothing to do with games, you know.
Yep.
So anyways, I can ramble long
No, it's all good.
my bad.
I was gonna. So why did you guys decide? I know we're bumping right up on the time, but why did you guys decide on, or if we really even was a conscious decision to go publisher list, like to self-publish? Like what was kind of the philosophy behind that?
Like, I think part of it is just like I think I might have been the one that initiated that, but it's I feel like I just got I can't justify it with everything. I have a gut feeling that we can, and it'll go well. Like it'll be whatever it's supposed to be. Like I think that's weird because I'm generally very scientifically minded, but I have just this feeling that it's a good path for us. Part of it is rooted in that we're doing something that, while we're not the very first people to do it, it's not done very often. Like, so there have been a handful of stop motion games, and then there is one little piece of what we're doing that might be very unique, and I don't know enough about it to say this definitively. But the fact that we're not using a sprite for our main character, and that the character really is in all those environments and all those individual motions were animated dynamically, is also like very unique in terms of the history of computer games or video games in general. And so as a result, we don't have as crowded a field of games that are like our game.
Yeah.
You know, so that's what, like, I was looking at that going, like, I think we might be able to take a shot at this and put this out there and see if it resonates with people. That was at least my thinking on it. I'm happy for, you know, to hear Ben's on that as well.
We did have a conversation kind of earlier on. Once we got the proof of concept going, we were like, oh yeah, this is a game we can totally make. And we did have a brief discussion about it. We were like, do we want to go to a publisher? And one of the things I remember we mentioned was that was like, well, do we want to like give any like control creatively to anybody else besides us and Will? And I don't know that that's actually like the reality all the time necessarily with publishers, but it can be a risk. And also it's kind of like, well, now we have to like shop our game to publishers instead of just making you know, like maybe it would be different if somebody approached us now and we're like, hey, we'll let you make this game as you want to make it, but you know, we'll give you the support you need. Maybe we talk about that and have that discussion. But I think that, you know, for now, I think and definitely at that point we're like, let's just see what we can do and like with our own resources. But I mean, things could evolve maybe, but I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I think that at the end of the day, like with the resources that we have, we're going to be, and the time that we have, we'll be able to release in October when we hope. And, you know, and if we have to adjust, it wouldn't be by much. So,
it definitely feels like unneeded complexity for what you guys are doing, because as you said early on, is just like how you guys had this, you planned this out, you guys knew what you wanted, you guys planned out exactly everything that you were going to basically do. It's outside of just marketing, you kind of look at a publisher and say, well, what else do you have to offer
Yeah,
me?
they'd have to have a
Like,
really, really good reason,
yeah,
a really compelling, argument as to why we need them.
yeah,
I think, which isn't to say that that doesn't exist. I think there probably are some for sure. And
yeah.
like, what the hell do we know? We're just we're just two monkeys in one in a garden shed and one on a laptop and
Fair.
putting this shit together, dude. I mean, we don't know anything about marketing or publishing games. Like,
Yeah,
so we're figuring it out right now, So,
right.
who's to say if an expert came to us and was like, no, you guys are doing this wrong and you need to do this and gave us a really compelling argument, I'm sure we would talk about it.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think at this point it's just kind of like, well, we'll just kind of see let's see how far we can get by ourselves. And if we can get all the way to the finish line by ourselves, then fuck yeah, like that's awesome.
do it. Yeah. Are we planning on doing any sort of demo or anything like that? Or are we just going to go straight to release?
See, that I don't know. Like we have a demo, but it's only we've only been like giving it to people privately. So like or in person. So like I took it to Dublin Comic Con, and I had a great time letting people play it there, and it was really fun to see people's reactions in real time, and they seemed to really enjoy it. Most of the folks that played it, there were things about it that really surprised them. But our game, we don't anticipate it having we anticipate that it'll take the average player maybe 3 or 4 hours to complete it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always this thought of like if we have the demo out there publicly, then that might it might like spoil a bit of the experience. Like at least that's kind of my feeling on it in a way. So yeah, not really sure. Like I haven't made my mind up about it, but what do you think, Ben?
Yeah, we've kind of discussed it a little bit, especially lately. I think maybe closer to launch, we could give some limited content to somebody who wanted to showcase it. But at the end of the day, yeah, I think that the full game just isn't going to be all that long, and so it should be like a long feature film, basically. And so like if people watch like 30 minutes of Dune, how hyped would they how much more hyped can they get about Dune watching the first 30 minutes of it, you know what I mean? So it's like, well, just like give them a trailer and like, but I mean, that being said, yeah, I think that it could that there's flexibility. We're a very flexible team. Like if the needs arise and we're like, yeah, maybe we should put a demo out or something, we could have that conversation. But I don't know that that's super necessary for a game as small, as tight, I guess I should say, as Éalú.
It just occurred to me.
Go ahead, Ivan.
Sorry.
Well, just a quick thought. It just occurred to me that like just now, the part of what we're creating here is similar to something that my wife does a lot. She designs sets for promenade pieces where the audience is actually there with the actors moving through a physical set. And there's some interactive elements of those kinds of theatrical pieces. And like our game is in a way somewhat like a digital version of that. So the experience of not knowing an awful lot about it going into it might be one of the best experiences a person can have.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're there with this character traveling through the sets as this play plays out. And so the difference is you are controlling what's going on. But
yeah.
So
yeah, that was exactly what I was going to say. The shock and awe is the experience, and it's like if you give it away too much, then people might already assume, oh, okay, well then I guess I already know what this is going to be about.
Yeah.
And it's instead of experiencing it in its entirety up front, they can just, if you give them a piece of it, it could potentially almost be like, I don't want to, not negative isn't the right word, but it's almost it's almost like seeing like the punch. It's like hearing the punchline before you get there, and it's like, well, no, you want them to get in there, and then you get to really experience the whole thing. And if you get a little piece of it, then it's like, oh, okay, well, I already kind of see what the whole thing this is about, and then they might move on.
Yeah.
So keeping it close to the chest. I mean, it could be the right strategy, but I mean,
Yeah,
who
and we
knows
I mean
any
we're
of us?
some people are seeing it, right, and have played it, and you know, and we've been kind of using that as like, you know, play test data,
Yeah.
right, much as we can. But you know, yeah, a big mechanic of this game, like a lot of other kind of puzzle puzzle games in this sort of genre, is, you know, it's the real what do you call it, like the your progress in the game is really your knowledge about the
Yes.
right. And so, you know, you know, for folks who've played Outer Wilds or older gamers who played Myst, you know,
Yeah.
like there's, you know, how you progress through the game is really dependent on how much you know about the maze and how it works. And so to have too much knowledge going into it might spoil it. I don't know that it's quite as extensive as it would like, you know, if people knew everything about Outer Wilds going in. I don't know if you've played that game, but
I played a little. I played Myst when I was a kid, obviously,
yeah,
because it was just one of those things that.
yeah. Ours is
Yeah.
probably a little closer to the Myst end of the spectrum than it is to like the Outer Wilds end of the spectrum in that way. But also there's just like so much information. Like,
Yeah.
like, our game is very light, right? So, but yeah. So, but essentially there is like a knowledge. You know, it's you know, at what point do these puzzles click to you, or do these systems, you know, and their interactions with each other, do those things click to you? That's gonna depend. That's gonna change your progress in the game, or update your progress in the game more than like unlocking a skill or finding an item or defeating an enemy, right? It's learning, you know, in the maze. So in that way, I think, yeah, it is. It's kind of it's probably better for us to just kind of like drop people in with as the least amount of knowledge possible. So I'm a little hesitant to put out like a demo, just for that reason, but.
Cool.
But we'll see.
Well, if I don't wrap up, my wife will kill me. So
okay.
So here, what I'll do is I'll let you guys do an outro, give everyone all the info that they would need as far as where to find you guys, where to follow the game, when we have a potential release, and just anything anyone would want to know about both you guys and how to follow and where to get everything. Either one of you guys can go first.
Ivan, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. So our game is called Éalú. It's a point-and-click stop-motion adventure. It's available to Wishlist on Steam currently. You can see our most recent trailer on Will Wood's YouTube channel. We don't have much of a social media presence, either of us, but either Ben or myself. But so the best way to follow what we're doing is Wishlist the game on Steam. Check out the trailer that we have out, and then we'll be, you know, pushing out new screenshots and that sort of thing. I was thinking about mostly to Steam.
I don't have anything to add to that. That was perfect.
Oh, sweet. Well, right on. Awesome. That's perfect. Well, right on, guys. Thank you guys so much. You guys have officially taken the king's spot for the longest show. So
that's such an honor.
You've taken it. But it's been well worth it. It was a lot of fun. I actually really enjoyed talking to you guys.
Yeah, I wish you the best with this show, because I really do think that this is what indie devs need is stuff like this when they're early on, to talk to somebody about what they're doing and to get more community. Community is everything for this. So
for sure.
Yeah,
I hope so, man. Thanks again, guys. I really appreciate you being here, and I really enjoyed talking to you guys. I like learning from you guys. It was a lot of fun.